Pay close attention. The news you're about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Israel Hawkins. Well, wars, rumors of wars, and countries preparing for war are what top our news for this broadcast. With the unrest on both a national and civil level, there's no wonder the nations are angry and their leaders are on high alert. Well, to start us off today, we're going to talk about a little country called Haiti, which has been in crisis mode for many years now, this year being no exception. Now, this ABC News report on the ongoing unrest delves into the cause and how it's affecting its citizens. Let's take a look.
Haiti is on a brink of becoming a failed state. A gangland rebellion is ripping through the republic. The prime minister has announced he will step down once a transitional presidential council is in place. But will the gang leaders at the heart of the fighting reject that plan, continuing to put Haitians at the center of the crisis? The human toll, hunger, violence, and unrest has been unthinkable. Our Matt Rivers, who's been reporting on conditions there now for years, takes us back to Haiti to see that toll firsthand.
Haiti is collapsing. The country has been ravaged by 2 weeks of chaos, of bloodshed, of intense fighting and horrific human suffering with no obvious way out. Port-au-Prince is no stranger to gang violence, but an unholy alliance has emerged between the most powerful armed groups, now unified behind this man, Jimmy Chercier, a.k.a. Barbecue.
Première étape dans la bataille, nous c'est retirer Ariel Henry sous pouvoir. Ensuite, pour nous déclencher bataille réelle contre le pouvoir et pour nous déclencher bataille réelle contre le système qui est là, système oligarque corrompu, politicien traditionnel corrompu.
And that first step, now done. The unelected Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, resigned on Monday after agreeing to a transitional government. Henry now out after weeks of horrific violence led by Barbecue, Haiti's most notorious gang leader. He and his soldiers have launched massive coordinated assaults around Port-au-Prince for nearly 2 weeks. Dozens of police stations, many destroyed. Gang members even showing off stolen body armor. Constant assaults at the airport forced it to shut down too.
Cette nuit, on avec manchette et nous-mêmes et je dis à nous des armes nous n'a gommé pour nous libérer pays.
But the people he says he's trying to free, ordinary Haitians, are being decimated by the fighting. The violence has paralyzed Port-au-Prince, a hellscape now cut off from the outside world. Hospitals around the city show the human toll. In this major hospital, no doctors or nurses can even make it to work to help the patients. Gangs have barricaded off entire sections of the city to slow down police, attacking those who dare cross. Haiti was struggling before this crisis broke out, among the worst hunger crises in the world.
This crisis existed before. There were 1.6 million people in Port-au-Prince who didn't have enough to eat. Before this crisis, this is making things worse.
Things are so bad in Port-au-Prince, even the director of the World Food Program for Haiti can't get in. He spoke to us from Cap-Haïtien, a city in the north. This warehouse full of food that people in Port-au-Prince could certainly use, but even if WFP wanted to send it, they can't. The capital city is blocked.
There's no way in and out that's safe. With the port now being closed, the real risk is that the 1.6 million people in Port-au-Prince who are acutely food insecure could tip into famine. This is one of the most extreme situations I've ever seen as an aid worker.
Dozens of gang members and nearly a half dozen police have been killed in the fighting. while thousands of citizens have been forced to flee from their homes. Over the weekend, the U.S. evacuated non-essential embassy personnel in the night, choppering in Marines to reinforce the embassy. The State Department urging Americans to leave. Haitians, though, have nowhere else to go. It all led to this week, a series of emergency meetings in Jamaica with Haitian stakeholders, regional leaders, and even the U.S. Secretary of State. Henri resigns, and now in his place, a soon-to-be set-up council of 7 people who collectively will act as Haiti's president. The question, is that enough to stop the violence? Haiti has long been in decline.
Bonjour. Bonjour.
I've been there many times in the last few years, including last year, as farmers struggled to sell their produce amongst gang rule. Countless others went hungry, forced to eat mud pies, a mixture of mud, salt, and butter.
No one wants to eat this.
Yeah, but if you're starving, you get to.
So what now? How does the violence end? In the short term, Barbecue says it's simple.
Je pense que on apprend yon pause juste pour nous évaluer situation, juste pour permettre que gon chita parler qui fait entre toute couche sociale dans le pays, entre groupes armés.
Take that with a grain of salt. Barbecue is also a disgraced former policeman, accused of planning a 2018 massacre that killed dozens, sanctioned by the U.S. and the UN. His gangs have terrorized this country for years with murders, kidnappings, and extortion, taking advantage of a political vacuum. But a ceasefire in any form would be welcome relief.
Haiti is just another example on how we see time and time again that when you have these conflicts, whether they're internal or external with other countries going at it, the inhabitants there, the people, are the ones that suffer the most, as we saw with Haiti there. They have the food, they can't get it to them.
Right, that's sad.
Well, a little closer to home, where the border of the U.S. and Mexico is a hotspot for migrant crossing called the Tucson sector, where about 50,000 migrant apprehensions were recorded in 2023, with over 17,000 just last week alone. Now, even though the numbers of crossings are down this year across the entire southern border, those lower numbers are still double what we saw in 2023.
Well, another thing that has changed from last year is the geographical shifts in the crossing, meaning more migrants are attempting to cross in more remote and more dangerous areas, which, of course, further stretches the resources of Border Patrol as their patrols are spread farther apart. They have to deploy more personnel and perform more rescue operations.
Well, and it's not just people from Mexico seeking to enter the U.S. The migrant population is very diverse, with people from Guatemala, Bangladesh, Guinea, Ecuador, Nepal, just to name a few. And of course, it's taking weeks or months to travel, and they have to endure the harsh treatment which they encounter along the way, including being robbed and having their passports stolen by Mexican officials. I think their passports and their cell phones taken away, so if left with very little possible way of getting any help. So now they want to know what happens next. Where can we go?
Welcome back. Well, tensions are escalating in Europe after confidential military information was leaked, prompting a former Russian president to claim Germany is preparing for war.
Well, first of all, the Germans discussing something like this on WebEx is insane, really. I mean, it's very easy to hack into. These generals talking about this, speculating what they're going to do next. That's what surprised me. But on the other hand, it also tells me that the Germans are worried about the Ukrainian front lines collapsing. And if they do, what will Putin do next? Not only will he take Ukraine, is he going to go into the Baltics? Is he going to go into Moldavia? They don't know. We don't know at this point, but the Europeans are panicking, especially with the United States, pulling out of Ukraine's support, which is an absolute disaster. So the Germans are expecting the worst, and they're talking about maybe giving some weapons. And this has not been decided, to blow up the bridge that goes across the Kerch Straits into Crimea, which the Russians have basically said, if you do that, if you give those weapons, it's war with Europe.
Well, how legitimate are Germany's concerns? I mean, we know that Putin is in this for the long haul.
Well, I'm concerned. I mean, he's talking like Joseph Stalin. He says, I will sacrifice hundreds of thousands of people to reconstitute the Russian Empire. So, I mean, you've got to take him at his word sometimes. Is he going to use nuclear weapons at this point? We obviously don't know that, but it's a possibility. And it's a possibility if the French and the Germans really up the ante by giving the Ukrainians weapons, for instance, that could hit Moscow.
China's President Xi Jinping has met with a delegation from the PLA, or People's Liberation Army, as well as China's police force, instructing them to prepare for a sea war against India and United States of America. Let's repeat that just in case you didn't hear. The Chinese president is preparing his country for a war at sea against both India and America.
Well, both Chinese security teams have been told to start building cyberspace, defense systems, as well as work on improving their ability to maintain national security. Now, President Xi specifically asked Chinese forces to coordinate the preparations for maritime military conflicts, maritime rights, interests, and the developments of the maritime economy.
Timing is everything, and we can see flare-ups in the South China Sea once again, called the most serious yet by the Philippine government. Chinese Coast Guards have been ramming Philippine vessels in two separate incidents. The first was when a Chinese Coast Guard ship crashed into a Philippine Coast Guard ship. Then, an hour later, the same ship attacked a Philippine supply vessel. The smaller boat was blocked from moving forward, harassed, and finally water cannoned.
Well, now turning our focus to the Ukraine and Russia situation. After Ukraine carried out a massive drone strike on Russia, President Putin is now threatening to use nuclear weapons and calling on the United States to intervene to help calm the situation and avoid a nuclear war. Now, the Ukraine attack consisted of over 60 drones and targeted energy infrastructure, including an oil refinery. Now, the point of those attacks is to interrupt fuel deliveries to the front lines, as well as affect Russian oil exports abroad.
Well, all this while Russians are heading to the polls for elections. But Putin has changed the constitution so he can be elected until 2036. It's almost certain he will come out the winner for the next 6-year term, especially since most of his opposition are either exiled, in jail, dead, such as Alexei Navalny, who worked to expose corruption in the Russian government.
Well, just a few hundred miles from the Arctic Circle, you will find the location for NATO's latest military exercises. Now, these winter drills have incorporated the newest NATO members, Sweden and Finland. Take a look at how they are preparing for war against an imaginary enemy, or is it? Take a look.
NATO's newest member, Sweden, has been called straight into a military exercise involving forces from 13 countries, including Britain and the US. The air, land and sea exercise, which includes the part of the Arctic Circle, is aimed at bolstering NATO's ability to defend the Nordic region. It's part of a huge series of NATO training maneuvers being carried out called Steadfast Defender, involving 90,000 troops and scheduled to go on until the end of May. It's the biggest such exercise since the Cold War.
If Putin is moving troops and equipment towards NATO's new borders in the Arctic, NATO's newest members are confident they're ready to meet that threat. Hundreds of miles north of the Arctic Circle, the biggest NATO exercise for decades in the far north, is incorporating Finnish and Swedish forces into the alliance. In Norway's northernmost fjords, Italian Marines storm ashore in an operation overseen by the British carrier Prince of Wales, far out to sea. 14 nations simulating a response to a Russian invasion across this barren Arctic landscape.
We will blow up the bridge, and then we will delay the enemy further east.
The Norwegian commander here aware that however well they can simulate warfare, The Russians are learning real lessons in real war.
We see from the Russian side they are learning and they are at war and they are learning day by day. So it's probably a more effective force going forward than they were 2 years ago.
Through all the years in which Finland and Sweden stood apart from the NATO alliance, they were not disarmed, far from it. So while NATO now has an 800-mile longer border with Russia, there are substantial and well-trained forces to defend it. Sweden started this Arctic exercise technically non-aligned. They finish it full NATO members.
Boy, I'm sure Russia is seeing that as more of a push against its borders, just like they had a problem with the NATO forces and exercises on the southern part of their borders. Now they're getting it from the north as well.
Right, another provocative move that President Putin has said many times. You keep doing this, stationing all these troops along the border, he's not going to put up with it forever.
That's right. Well, Chuck Shumer is pushing for changes in leadership on both the Israeli and Palestinian sides so that the two-state solution can be achieved. Well, please listen to the Senate Majority Leader's reasoning to move the current leaders.
But in order to achieve a two-state solution, the reality is that things must change. Right now, there are four major obstacles standing in the way of two states. And until they are removed from the equation, there will never be peace in Israel and Gaza and the West Bank. The four major obstacles are Hamas and the Palestinians who support and tolerate their evil ways, radical right-wing Israelis in government and society, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The fourth major obstacle to peace is Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has all too frequently bowed to the demands of extremists like Ministers Smotrich and Ben-Gvir and the settlers in the West Bank. I have known Prime Minister Netanyahu for a very long time. While we have vehemently disagreed on many occasions, I will always respect his extraordinary bravery for Israel on the battlefield as a younger man. I believe in his heart he has his highest priority is the security of Israel. However, I also believe Prime Minister Netanyahu has lost his way by allowing his political survival to take the precedence over the best interests of Israel. He has put himself in coalition with far-right extremists like Ministers Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, and as a result, he has been too willing to tolerate the civilian toll in Gaza, which is pushing support for Israel worldwide to historic lows. Israel cannot survive if it becomes a pariah. Prime Minister Netanyahu has also weakened Israel's political and moral fabric through his attempts to co-opt the judiciary. And he has shown zero interest in doing the courageous and visionary work required to pave the way for peace, even before this present conflict. As a lifelong supporter of Israel, it has become clear to me the Netanyahu coalition no longer fits the needs of Israel after October 7th. The world has changed radically since then, and the Israeli people are being stifled right now by a governing vision that is stuck in the past.
Katan, as Chuck Schumer is pushing for different leaders, so that they can accomplish the two-state solution, which many people have said in the past, this is the way that there will be peace. It reminds me of one of the teachings that Yeshua Hawkins brought forth regarding when they declare peace, and that, which is, a direction that we see that these leaders want to go. They want to find a peace here. But Yeshua Hawkins brought forth that there would come then sudden destruction.
That's right.
So, they always look for the ways to peace, but they are totally rejecting the one thing that brings the true peace, the true peaceful solution.
Yeah, which explains why the nations are angry and they're heading down a road to war.
That's right. Well, if you want to find out more about these stories, call the House Yahweh, and when you do, don't forget to ask for your free copy of the Prophetic Word magazine and monthly newsletter. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites by going to Yahweh.com, YisraelHawkins.com, or Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. You can email the House of Yahweh at info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And of course, don't forget the Israel Says and Ask Israel programs online to aid you in your study and understanding of the scriptures and today's prophecies. You can find those by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere. Up next is another classic message from Yisrael Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for watching.